I got it. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group Saturday night speaker meeting. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. Welcome, everybody. A reminder that we record all speakers at this group. If anybody wants, you want a CD of a past speaker, if you want a CD of tonight's speaker, you can get it next week. You can get it at our sister group this Thursday. You can get tonight's speaker this Thursday at the sister group, Salem Big Book Study. It's right up the road here at Salem UCC Church. Every Thursday night. This group has a Facebook page and it has a website. If you have any happenings going on throughout the area, you got some flyers you want to bring in for a celebration, anniversary, you can bring in flyers, you can post it to our Facebook group. We encourage you to do that. A reminder that there's no smoking on the church property, so if you could please be considerate of that as you're coming and going from the meeting. Just wait until you leave here or take it across the street, whatever it be. I guess that's about it as far as announcements. Teresa's going to come up here and chair the meeting. Everybody have a good time.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Teresa, and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening right here at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Doylestown. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of the group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm an alcoholic from Long Island, New York.
My name is Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Jeff. I'm an alcoholic.
Welcome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and bid books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And tonight we have Mike coming up to read the preamble.
My name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And next we'll bring up Jillian to read the 12 steps.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm Jillian, and I'm an alcoholic. The 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And back to Teresa.
The seventh tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. A reminder that there is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And please help me to give a warm welcome to a very good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Sarah I. from the Port Fishington Speaker Group.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah, I'm an alcoholic. Oh God. Whew. All right, I need to breathe for a second here. Okay, I'm going to start by saying I have a sobriety date, and it's May 3rd, 2012. I have a home group. It's the Port Fishington Speaker Meeting. We meet Monday nights at 7:30. It's an hour speaker meeting just like this one. I have a sponsor, and I have the honor and privilege of sponsoring Women in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want to start by thanking Ron and thanking the group for having me out tonight, and thank the group of friends and all the people who showed up tonight. You know, I was that alcoholic who wasn't invited anywhere, and I had no friends, and I had no community of people around me, and I was in a dark, lonely place for the better part of my life. So the fact that I'm surrounded by the love of these people is an absolute miracle, and I cannot express the gratitude I have for the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I'm just going to talk in a general way tonight about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I was brought up in a good family. I have good parents. They've been married 52 years. They're still together, and I have had six brothers and sisters growing up, and I had a lot of love, and I was cared for, and I was provided for. And that is not the story I would have told you when I came in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had this whole delusion that I was living in, that my mother was a violent, abusive person, and that she was a terrible human being, and that nobody loved me, and that nobody cared about me, and that I was less than everybody else. And this is where I felt every place I went in my life. I felt it in my home. I felt it when I went to school. I always suffered from that disconnect, like I'm not as good as everybody else. And what that caused me to do was become a dishonest person. I started lying at a young age because the thing I wanted more than anything else in this world was to have friends and to be loved and accepted by you guys. And I thought that if I just told you what you wanted to hear, and if I liked the same music as you, and I dressed like you, you would like and accept me. And I didn't really know who I was. I just remember always being afraid. I'm always feeling on the outside of everything. And growing up, my parents, there were a lot of rules in my house. My parents were extremely religious. My father was a Presbyterian minister, so God was the center of the household. We were the family that prayed around the dinner table. We were the family that sometimes prayed in public, and there was a lot of shame surrounding this. It was embarrassing to me. The whole idea of God was embarrassing to me, and I was embarrassed of my parents. And I was embarrassed of my upbringing, and we didn't have a lot of money, and I was always bounced around and the new kid in school, so this feeling of separation was compounded by the fact that I didn't have the same clothes as other people, and I talked differently, and I didn't have these long-standing friendships, but I felt uncomfortable in my own skin up until I found alcohol, and it solved that problem for me. And I believed that I became an alcoholic for a very long time because I experienced a terrible trauma at the hands of 3 men when I was 15 years old. And I talk about this a lot because I can think that it's external things that make me an alcoholic. I always thought something on the outside was the cause of me being an alcoholic. Like, it's what my parents did to me, it's what these men did to me, but that's not what makes me an alcoholic. Like, what makes me an alcoholic is that alcohol does something for me that it doesn't do for the normal person. And when this trauma happened to me, I ended up in the hospital, and my mother got called, and her reaction to this was one of shame and guilt. Like, how could you let this happen to you? How could you let this happen? How could you be so stupid? How could you put yourself in this position? And so I already feel this sense of fear and inadequacy and separation from everyone and everything around me. And after this happens, I am so full of rage and shame and guilt and hatred of everyone around me. I just want to die. Being in my skin is the most painful thing I could possibly imagine. And I'd had a drink here and there before this event happened, but after this happened, I realized the effect that alcohol could produce for me. And when I put one in me, and it took everything away. It made everything okay. It took away that feeling of pain. It took that feeling of separation away. I felt okay in my own skin for the first time in my entire life. I could laugh, I could have fun, I could feel connected, I could feel connections with other people. I didn't care what you thought of me anymore. I didn't care what those men did to me anymore, and I didn't care what my mother said anymore. It made everything okay. And I started to have fun in life for the first time. I wasn't afraid anymore. And so the allergy was there from the very beginning. I didn't know it was an allergy, but I did know that when I started drinking, it never stopped at one. And I was a tornado from a very young age. I had my friends dropping me off at my parents' doorstep, like passed out on their front step, and I would disappear for weeks at a time. And my parents were well-meaning people. Like, they did everything that they could, or everything they thought they could to help, like send me to group homes or send me to therapy, and they did everything they could, and nothing worked because alcohol was working for me, and I would do anything I could to get to get that sense of relief. And so this went on for a couple of years, and so this is a disease of progression. And early on, I had there were periods in my life where if I had sufficient reason, I could stop drinking for a period of time. And that the first sufficient reason I had to stop drinking was when I met a man who would become my first boyfriend, and I got pregnant at a young age, and that became my first sufficient reason to stop drinking. And there are things that I know in hindsight today. Like, I was able to not drink for those 9 months, but how I know that I'm different from a normal drinker is that I obsessed that entire 9 months about when this child was going to get out of me and I could get to the bar and get another drink. And I know that that's not how my sisters were. Like, they would have pregnancies and they were happy and they would enjoy, life. And I was just like, good Lord, like, can this be over with? Like, I need a drink. And that's exactly what I did. And when she was born, I did exactly that. I started drinking immediately. And shortly after she was married, I did exactly what my parents wanted me to do, which was, when you get pregnant out of wedlock and you're brought up in the type of environment that I was raised in, is you marry the guy. And I wasn't opposed to this idea because I truly believe that the sole purpose of a husband, in my life was for him to provide every single need for me. Like, make sure I had a house, a car, like everything I wanted and needed. And I figured that's the role this man was going to play in my life. And probably because of my ideas of marriage, that marriage lasted about 10 months. And at a few years sober even, I was still telling the story that marriage ended because he was, violent and he was abusive, and that's just not the truth. It talks in our literature about more will be revealed, and what was revealed a few years into my sobriety is that I'd been telling a lie for so long that I absolutely believed it. And what really happened was I was the violent, abusive drunk. I was attacking and assaulting him. He restrained me. I called 911, and I took everything from him. I took his home, I took his car, I took his child, I took a sizable chunk of his income every single month. And I was totally okay with that because I'm selfish and self-centered, and I don't care about anyone but myself. It's all about me and how I'm going to get what I need. And, I deluded myself into thinking that I was sober this entire time. I do a lot of other things to treat my alcoholism, and out of respect for Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to keep it in the bottle. But I will just say that I've used, doctors to treat my alcoholism, and I have a delusion that if it comes in the form of a prescription, that it's perfectly okay, and it doesn't matter if I have one doctor or 10 doctors prescribing it, or if you tell me to take one and I take half the bottle, that's totally okay. That legitimizes what I'm doing. And I was also experiencing a lot of external unmanageability very early on. Like, I would always have a roof over my head. I was always able to keep things together just enough to keep people off my back, but things were always shifting around in my life. Like I could never keep a steady home. I could never keep a steady job. Like I always had to move things around because I couldn't live like normal people do. It talks in our bedevilments. We couldn't make a living. Not because I can't go to work, it's because I can't be accountable long enough. Like I keep screwing things up. I keep showing up late. I keep showing up intoxicated. Like this is how I was living. And this went on for 3 years, and when my daughter was 3 years old, I could not financially provide for her anymore. So of course, rather than getting a second job or doing something to fix this problem, I rely on my ex-husband to do that, and I call him up and I try to get more money out of him, and he cuts me off and he says I'm done, and he takes me to court and he takes primary physical custody of our child. And selfish and self-centered alcoholic, I throw the whole fit, like, how dare you? How could you take my child? She's mine. I gave birth to her. How could you do this? And the reality is like she was in the way of my drinking. There was a sense of relief when he got primary physical custody because I didn't have to take care of a 3-year-old little child anymore. I could drink the way I wanted to drink, and alcohol started to dictate everything that I did. Every place that I lived. I moved to Manhattan because the bar stayed open until 5 o'clock in the morning. I worked in the bar and restaurant industry because nobody cares if you come to work loaded. Or at least if they do, they don't really say anything. And, and that's how I lived my life. Like surrounded, like everything revolved around alcohol. And I was barely a part-time parent. Barely. And I couldn't be bothered. I just couldn't be bothered. He had actually done me a favor and done my daughter a favor by taking her. And, but I don't see that at the time. All I see is like hate and resentment and anger, and it's his fault, and it's my mom's fault, and it's everybody else's fault that my life is turning out like this. And I don't know, so I just party for a few years, and it's a good time, like living in Manhattan or living wherever I want to live, because I'm running around like a teenager, like with no responsibilities, and meanwhile I have a child. That's how I was living. And I was having a pretty good time. And when I was about 27 years old, I met the love of my life in a bar. It was one of those beautiful love stories, right? You meet in a bar and you go home together that night. 2 weeks later, you sign a lease together. And this is really what sold me on this relationship. Was 2 months later, he pulls out this huge rock. He pulls out a 2-carat diamond ring. For me, that was enormous. And I was like, you know what? This is it. I have arrived. Like, I'm going to be okay. This relationship is going to fix me, because the reality, here's another delusion I suffer from, is that it's something outside of me that's going to fix what's wrong internally. Something external is going to fix what's going on in here. So if I have the right marriage, or if I have the right number of children, or if I have the right house or job or car, that will make me just like everybody else. And that's what I did. I put all my faith in this relationship and in this man and in this marriage to be my solution. And the problem with that is, A, he's a human being. B, I never told him one true fact about myself, including what I did for a living, and that I wasn't sober, and everything was a lie. Absolutely everything was a lie. And he didn't even know the truth when we stood on the beach, 6 months later in Jamaica and got married. And he didn't know the truth when 6 months after that I was pregnant with his child, and that I wasn't sober. And I started to have some problems, things during the pregnancy pretty early on, and I went to the hospital, and the hospital made a mistake, and they owned their mistake, but this mistake caused a really bad end to the pregnancy, to the point where I had to have surgery. And I remember very clearly going home to our apartment and sitting on the couch and watching my husband pace through the living room, freaking out. I'm going to sue this doctor, I'm going to sue this hospital. He's so angry, and all I remember is being crippled with fear, like he's going to leave. He's going to leave me, and he can't leave me, because I can't do this by myself. I have to fix this. I have to do something to fix this. He wants a child, and I have to give him a child. So in my brilliant mind, I came up with a wonderful idea of getting pregnant again. And so 5 weeks after this horrific miscarriage, I ended up pregnant again, and something inside me completely broke. I had no connection to this baby inside of me, none whatsoever. I didn't want to be pregnant anymore. I didn't want to eat anymore. I didn't even want to live anymore. I couldn't breathe a sober breath, and I couldn't tell another living, breathing human being what I was feeling or thinking, because I was so full of shame and guilt. What kind of woman does not want her own child? What kind of woman doesn't want to be pregnant? What kind of mother doesn't want her baby? And I was in this dark, dark, lonely place, and I was terrified. And during this period of time, things started to get progressively worse, and my husband started to see the truth of who he married. And During my pregnancy, I ended up in a psych ward twice, and I was a danger to myself and this child inside of me. And as a direct result of all my actions throughout this pregnancy, my son was born 3 months premature, and he was 2 pounds. And the first time I laid eyes on him was in the NICU, covered in tubes, not able to breathe on his own. I can't hold him. His father can't hold him. He's alone in this little incubator, and I put him there. And all the love that was missing throughout my pregnancy came the second I laid eyes on him, but it didn't matter because it was blocked off by this shame and guilt about what I had done to him, because I knew this was my fault. And the problem was that I wasn't getting the same effect from alcohol anymore. It wasn't producing that same ease and comfort. It wasn't fun anymore. It stopped being fun. And I was just seeking more and more relief, and it wasn't coming. My solution wasn't working anymore, and I really tried to be a mother to this little boy. I wanted to. I really wanted to be a mother to both of my children. At this point, I wanted to be a wife, and it talks about in our literature, it says, like, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we want to. No matter how badly I want to be a good person, no matter how badly I want to be a good daughter and sister and mother, I can't do it on my own power. I just can't. And the kind of mother I was the kind of mother who nodded out and dropped her son on the floor, who left her son in a hot car to go get a drink. And this went on for 8 months. And when he was 8 months old, my husband got a call from the police station saying, "You need to come pick up your son, or we're locking your wife up." And that was my first felony arrest. And I had this moment, and it was a memory that came to me not too long ago, where I got bailed out the next day, and my husband had already packed everything up. He packed up his things, he packed up our son's thing, and he was leaving. He said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this." And after I throw my screaming fit and try to manipulate him with the whole, you said in sickness and in health, and I'm sick. How dare you? Threatening suicide and all this crazy stuff. He gives me this moment. He says, "You know what? We can get rid of this apartment, pack everything up, put it in storage. You go to treatment. You go get help. And my parents will help me take care of our son while you do that. And I'll try to fix this marriage." And I said no. I wasn't done, and I was too terrified. I was too petrified to live in my sober skin. I couldn't do it. And the power of alcohol was just that great. And so he left, and I just wanted to die. And that's exactly what I did. I went to bed and willed myself to die. I stopped eating. I just drank around the clock, and I didn't have the courage to kill myself, so I just laid there basically begging God to take my life. And this went on for almost 2 months, and at the end of this mess, my mother, this woman who I blamed for every problem I ever had on this earth and blamed for my alcoholism, she had a gut feeling that something was wrong with her child, and she got in her car and drove from Baltimore, Maryland to, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and 2-hour drive, and showed up at my door and found me 75 pounds with a fever of 106. Took me to the hospital where I had a blood infection, heart infection. And my mother is told, she's going to die. My parents are told, there's nothing we can do. This is too bad. She's going to die. And all I'm doing as a self-centered alcoholic is screaming at my mother saying, "How could you do this to me? Why couldn't you just let me die? How could you do this?" Because it's all about me and my pain. I don't care what my mother's going through. I don't care what my father's going through. I don't care what my children are going through. I don't care about their pain. It's all about my pain and my desire for that pain to end. I'm asking a mother to bury your child, and I'm a mother, and it's all about me. And needless to say, I didn't die, and I spent a month in the ICU and another month in a skilled nursing facility, getting physical therapy to walk, and I can't stay sober even in there, and I don't have the desire to stay sober even there. I just find other ways to drink. And I get out with nowhere to go, no children, no marriage, everything, my life is in shambles around me, and I just bounce around from place to place, relationship to relationship, sofa to sofa. I end up in detox after detox or rehab, or, in every detox I end up in a rehab, I meet the next love of my life in group, and, he's going to fix me. We move into his parents' house and become tornadoes in their lives, and end up co-defendants, and and that was the story over and over again. And I keep getting I keep getting arrested, and I go to jail, and I keep getting separated from alcohol, right? I keep getting separated from alcohol over and over and over again. And every time I'm separated from alcohol, I have the same experience. I'm done. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of jail or treatment and everything's going to be okay. I'm going to be a good mother. I'm going to get my kids back. I'm going to, have a good life. I'm going to get an apartment. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get married again. I really believed I wanted to be a drug and alcohol counselor. Like, that was the goal. Like, I thought I knew what was best for me. And as soon as I got out, the second I got out, I drank. Or maybe not the second, but a week or a month later, I was always drinking, and I couldn't stop. I didn't know about this mental obsession that kept taking me back over and over again, even though I was experiencing it. And, it just went on for so many years, and I was this awful, like I was the tornado in and out of my children's lives. Like, they never knew when they were going to get a phone call about what their mother was back behind bars. There was one time I got locked up on the way to my daughter's basketball game. Like, I just didn't show up, and the next phone call she got from me was like, "You have a collect call from George W. Hill Correctional Facility." Like, that's the kind of mother that I was. And this went on for, 6 years until I finally ended up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't end up here by choice. I got paroled here. I finished a sentence about 9.5 months, and I got paroled to a halfway house, and I was required to make 5 meetings a week and get a paper signed. So I found a local meeting that was close, convenient. There were cute boys there. You could smoke indoors. Made it my home group and did no work. And I didn't hear a word about God or the steps. And if you were talking about God, I was probably checking out completely. But I certainly wasn't doing any work. I would raise my hand. I would tell you all where I was at, and I would leave. And externally, I started to acquire some stuff like I always do. I got the job at a diner where I would flirt with a bunch of dirty old men and come home with a wad of cash that I would shove in a sock drawer, and I couldn't put it, because I couldn't put it in a bank account because someone was taking that because I owed everyone. And, I thought I was really doing well. And I'm starting to get visitation with my children again, albeit I have supervised visitation. I have to have an adult human being present to watch me with my own children. And, but I'm getting to see them, so I've convinced myself that I'm doing just fine. And then I finally finish this treatment program, and I get out, and I get my own apartment, and I think I'm doing great. Just dry. I stopped going to meetings altogether because you guys already did for me what I need. I'm fine now. I don't need any of this. All the external stuff is back. And I'm at my daughter's lacrosse game, and my 6-year-old little boy looks at me, and now at this point, he's being raised by another woman, and he's calling another woman mom, another woman who I hate more than anyone else in this world, because I think she stole my child from me. I'm so delusional that I think she swept in and kidnapped him, instead of the truth, which was I completely abandoned this little boy. And she was the only person who stepped up and did everything that I couldn't do, like wake up in the middle of the night when he was sick, and take him to school in the morning, and get him his school uniforms and do all the things that he needed. Like, this was the woman doing all of this. This was his mother, but I was so angry and resentful at her. And this is the situation we were in when he was 6 years old. And at my daughter's lacrosse game, at this supervised visit, he looks at me and he says, "You're not my real mom. Kim's my real mom because she takes care of me every day, and you just gave birth to me." And, it felt like a knife went directly into my heart, and I had no other solution in my life other than a chemical one, and that's what I did. I started drinking again that night, and needless to say, a year and a half later, I'm still drinking. Because the phenomenon of craving kicks in, I drink one. A year and a half later, I still can't stop. And it doesn't matter, like the drink becomes paramount to everything. It does not matter that I have eviction notices taped to my door, that I have warrants out for my arrest, that I'm losing my job, that that I have my family begging me to stop, that my daughter is saying, "Please don't do this anymore," and that I'm going to lose any opportunity to ever have a relationship with my son and go back to court and prove that I can be a mother to him. It doesn't matter. Alcohol has consumed everything, and it is more powerful than anything else in my life, and I've lost all power of choice, and I don't even know it. And I don't stop until 18 months later. I'm physically separated by law enforcement, and which is very effective. God really likes to use law enforcement when he wants to separate me from alcohol. And I do the same thing. Like I get locked up, I go to jail, I get out, I go to a recovery house, Exact same thing. Go to AA meetings out of an obligation or to get a paper signed. I don't do any work. I talk about my day. I meet a solution. The aspiring rap artist who's living at the other recovery house. We move in together. We've downgraded. We don't sign a lease together. We rent a room together. We move trash bags in. Everything's great. And that was the beginning of the end. It was the shortest run of my life, and it was the most painful thing I ever experienced because it was not an external bottom, for lack of a better word. Like, I'd experienced very bad external bottoms. I've had terrible consequences as a result of my drinking. Terrible consequences. The consequences never did anything to make me willing to stop. Like, I came in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm truly grateful for the traditions of AA, you know, that beautiful tradition of the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. And I'm also grateful for the beautiful people here who never judged whether I had that desire or not. Because for many years, I came in the rooms of AA with no desire. No desire to stop, no desire to be sober, just a desire for consequences to stop. That's it. That's all I wanted. Thought you guys would help me fix the outside of my life up and send me back into the world so I could do whatever I wanted to do. But, you know, I had not experienced this soul-crushing internal pain before. I'd had the external stuff happen to me over and over again, but this internal bottom I had never experienced before. And this time around, this was different. I had stuff on the outside. I had a roof over my head. I had a car. I had money in my pocket, and I was dying inside. I couldn't take the pain anymore. And I remember that last night very clearly. I remember grabbing the car keys off the nightstand and crawling across the bedroom floor so I don't wake this guy up because I still have money in my pocket and I'm not sharing with him. And I get in the car and I get on 95 and I'm driving to go get a drink. And for the first time in my life, like, I screamed out to God. I screamed out with, like, absolute sincerity, and I've talked to God my whole life, believe me. Like, I was raised in a household, like, I had, like, this idea of God, but the idea was completely, my conception was way off. You know, it talks in our 12 and 12 about this idea of God that's like Santa Claus, right? And that was the idea of God that I had. Like, here's my will, God. Please do this for me. Please fix this relationship. Please give me a lenient parole officer or a lenient judge or get me out of prison. And when God doesn't perform my will for me, I think he's either not there or he doesn't want any part of me. So, you know, I'd always talk to God in a jam, but this prayer was different. This prayer was completely different. This was a prayer from, like, the bottom of my soul, and it was a prayer for help. It was a prayer for help because for the first time in my life, I had the most overwhelming desire to turn my car around and not get a drink, and I couldn't do it. I physically couldn't turn my car around no matter how powerful that desire was to stop. And I screamed out to God, and the prayer was this: "Dear God, just kill me or stop me, please." Like, screaming it and begging it and banging on my steering wheel. Please just kill me or stop me. And, you know, God showed up again, law enforcement, 12 hours later, right on time. And I don't know what God looks like in your life, but I know that that was absolutely divine intervention. I know that when I screamed out with willingness for this to end, God showed up. And he separated me from alcohol the only way that has ever been effective for me, is to keep me locked away. And I have this, like, this is how insidious ego is and fear is for me, because I have this broken, absolutely beautiful broken moment where everything, I'm just completely crushed and I'm willing to do anything anyone tells me to do, and then all of a sudden I'm going, you know, I'm getting processed at the police station and you're shutting the cell door on me, and then the panic comes in like, oh God, this isn't the way I wanted to go. I wanted the nice, you know, comfy detox bed with the good drugs. Like, I didn't want to do it, like, you know, go cold turkey on the floor of a, you know, concrete floor of a holding cell, like, still kind of putting these conditions back on God. And they give me a phone to call people and see if I can, I don't know, make bail. And I pick up the phone and I call every single person I can think of, and everybody just hangs up one after the other after the other. And I can't even blame them. And I can't even say that I had some profound life-altering experience while I was incarcerated, because I did not. I went to a couple AA meetings in state prison simply to get out of my cell. That was it. You know, I thought that after 11 felonies, like, I wasn't going to end up with some serious consequences because of a summary retail theft, but I was wrong. So I ended up, you know, going to jail for 18 months, and nothing changed. Nothing, other than me being separated from alcohol. And this is my absolute empirical evidence to me that what I suffer from has nothing to do with a bottle. That it's within me, it's within my head, and it's my thinking, and it's my selfishness and my self-centeredness, because I can be that same tornado from behind the walls of a prison cell, and I'm calling home on my parents' dime, and I'm telling them what they need to do for me with the money that they've put on my phone account and what they've done wrong, and writing these long apology letters home saying like, I'm so sorry this happened, but if you were better people, maybe I wouldn't be here, and by the way, I need commissary money, that kind of stuff, and I think this is totally okay. And I'm obsessively calling this sick boyfriend who I just went on my last run with, like anything to get out of what was going on in here. I just couldn't take it. Like the noise in my head was overwhelming. And I finally got out of jail after 18 months. And I can't even say that I was completely surrendered and completely broken at that point, because I still had ridiculous ideas of how I was going to live my life. Like I was going to reconnect with the rapper ex-boyfriend who'd since been shot a few times, and we were going to move into a couples recovery house and get over on the state parole officer. Like these are the real thoughts that I had when I got out of state prison. And it took about a week for God to smash every single one of those plans right before my eyes, and for me to be left with nothing, just stuck in my sober skin, and nothing on the outside, like literally nothing, completely broken, and in more pain than I never experienced in my entire life, and like in the fetal position, screaming out like, I don't know what is wrong with me. Why do I feel this way? Why is sobriety so painful? Why am I in so much pain? And then the most beautiful thing happened. I went back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I walked up the stairs of the Greater Northeast group of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was completely and utterly broken and out of ideas, completely broken. And for the first time in my life, I saw God in another human being. I saw God very clearly in another alcoholic, because I had always seen people in the rooms of AA who were happy and joyous and free and lit up, but I didn't understand it. I thought they were either high or on drugs, or they were crazy, or they didn't drink like I did, but this was different. I saw people who I drank with, who were just like me, who were completely broken, one of whom was living on the streets in Kensington, who couldn't get a second sober, and they were walking around lit up with this big blue book under their arms, and they were talking about God, and they were talking about the 12 steps, and they were helping other people, and they were sober. And something in me knew, like, maybe this might work, maybe this will work for me, and at that point I became completely willing to do what anybody told me to do. And I met a woman who I had nothing externally in common with at all. Like, she was a 4 foot nothing blonde cheerleader type, and on the outside we'd never be in the same room, much less have one of the most intimate friendships you would ever have. But this woman walked with me side by side. She talked to me, explained to me about what I suffered from, about this illness that I have, this allergy that when I put one in me that I can't stop, and this mental obsession that will take me back to a drink no matter what the consequences look like, and this spiritual disconnect I have from everything, from God and his kids, and that I needed to get unblocked, and that in order to do that I needed something more powerful than myself, that I was beyond human aid. And she walked me through the steps, and I did not have any white light experiences going through the steps. Everything was awkward and uncomfortable. My third step experience was kneeling on the floor of a recovery house, holding hands with this woman, and girls screaming about who stole whose cigarettes behind me, and I didn't understand. I didn't get it. I was like, what does God have to do with any of this? Like, where's God in all of this? But I made a decision without even knowing it that day. It says our third step is a decision, right? What did I make a decision to do? I simply made a decision that when she slid that paper over to me and said, start writing, that I would do whatever she told me to do, that I would take the rest of these steps, right? And it says, like, this third step decision is vital and crucial, but it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of all of this stuff inside of me that's been blocking me off from God and you guys. And that's what I did. I started writing, and I wrote and I wrote, and I ended up with this insane 27-page list of mostly resentments, because it was still everybody else's fault. I was still the victim of life and everybody around me. And of course, I bring this to this woman, and I end up going into this fifth step thinking I'm going to get to tell her how everybody harmed me, and I go in with 27 pages of resentments, come out with 27 pages of amends. And so that's, if you haven't done it yet, welcome. I didn't have like this amazing experience with the fifth step. Like, I really, like, some of the stuff she said to me was really hard to stomach. It was really uncomfortable, and a lot of times I really just wanted to choke her. Like, I really did. Like, it was very humbling. Like, there's a lot of humility. It takes a lot of humility to really, truthfully have an experience with these 12 steps. And sitting there with a woman who is a decade younger than me, and telling me all of these truths about myself was a very, very humbling experience, and it didn't feel great. But the most beautiful thing that happened in my fifth step was this: my perception started to shift, and I didn't even realize it was happening at the time. But my mother, she got her own page. Like, she was the first resentment. She was the number one resentment, and it was like, you know, the person, my mother, the cause, you know. She's the reason I'm an alcoholic. Look what she did to me. But the number one thing was the thing she did to me when she was 15 years old, or, you know, how I saw that. And I'm sitting with this woman, and we're having this conversation, and we get to that fourth column, and I'm, you know, talking, resolutely looking for my mistakes here. And we start talking about all the harm I've caused this woman over the years and all the terrible things I've done to her. And then what comes out of this conversation was that I took this one thing that my mother did, this one decision my mother made based on her own fear. And I allowed it to blind me to every beautiful thing my mother ever did for me in my entire life. Every time she showed up at rehab with a fresh set of clothes, every time she showed up at, you know, in prison cells, every time she bailed me out of jail, every time she invited me to a family event where nobody wanted me. I couldn't see any of that because I was so blinded by this one thing. And that's what my resentment does. It blinds me to who you are. And that was the pattern all throughout, like this fifth step, seeing it over and over again. And the harm I cause based on how I feel that you've harmed me. And so I don't walk out of this feeling like I can look the world in the eye. I frankly felt worse. That was just my experience, and I'm okay with that, because when I'm in pain, I will work. Nothing drives me deeper into this work than being in a lot of pain, and that is true still today. I can get complacent in especially with 6 and 7. Especially with 6 and 7, you have these 2 steps that are, you know, 2 small paragraphs in the big book. But what I've learned in the past, especially year, is that this is where all my spiritual growth is going to happen. And it's really easy for me to come in the rooms of AA completely broken and say, oh my God, please just take everything. But what I'm really giving God is all the bigger stuff. It talks about our grosser handicaps, all the stuff that's causing me consequences. There's nothing spiritual about saying, oh God, make me less of a piece of garbage, so, you know, I stop having problems with other people. No, the real thing is like, when I need to choose between something that's, you know, the comfortable decision and the right decision, am I choosing the right decision or the comfortable one? And so in the beginning, when I'm first presented with these steps, like, I'm completely broken. I'm not clinging to anything, and I will give it, like, God, you can have all of me. Then, you know, fast forward 7 years later, and I'm like, maybe. Like, I like this, and I like this. You can have this, I think. And but back then, like, I was so broken. I was like, God, you can have all of this. And that made me ready to go out and to make these amends, and make even the difficult amends early on. And I made my mother, she was one of the first amends I made. And, you know, I was going to, script the whole thing, control the whole thing, right? I actually wrote a script of what I was going to say to her, and I presented it to my sponsor, who suggested lovingly that I throw it in the trash, and I talked to a power greater than myself and asked that power what to do. And that's what I did, and I approached my mother, and what came out of me was the truth. It was the truth about how I blamed her for my alcoholism, the truth about the harms I knew that I caused her. And she listened. She didn't really react. I mean, she just sat there very stoically, and I asked her if I'd left anything out, and she did not add anything at that time. We've since had several conversations about how my drinking affected her, but at that time, she really just let me finish talking, and when I asked her if there was anything I could do to make this right, she asked me to be a living example to my brother, who suffers from this disease. And the beautiful thing about this process is that I get to live these amends every single day in my life. Like, my amends had nothing, you know, I can go make a million declarations to people and, like, you know, I was wrong. And if I don't follow that up with direct action, and if I don't attempt to live this way of life and live up to that promise I made my mother that day, I haven't made an amends. And you guys teach me how to do that. You guys teach me how to carry this message to my brother. You guys teach me how to do it with love and not hitting him over the head with the big book. You guys teach me how to show him this program of action with love rather than tell him. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I walked away from that amends with these resentments towards my mother gone. And that's how a lot of my amends worked out. I have some uncomfortable amends stories, but most of my amends were really beautiful experiences. And I continued with the rest of the work, and I was sponsoring women within like 30 days, and thank God for that. Because, you know, I have a good friend who says, like, we do the work for when we need it, because coming up on 4 years sober, everything started to fall apart, or at least I perceived it that way. You know, the external stuff started to get ugly, and I'll start by saying that about 9 months after I went through my steps, I got in a relationship, and this time I really thought it was different. I thought God was in the center. Like, God brought me this guy. And this is how delusional I still am, right? Like, there were these glaring problems with this guy from the very beginning, but I pick and choose what I want to see. And I'll like ignore all these red flags all over the place, and I'll be like, no, he's really the perfect guy for me because we like the same band. Like, that's how sick I can be, even in sobriety. And so we end up moving in together, and this guy picks up, and he's, he can't stop. He's one of us. And for a year, he's drinking in the house that I'm living in, and I started to completely get sick all over again. So it talks in our 10th step about how we have to continue to watch for things, continue to watch for resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear. And so I'm definitely watching for resentment. I'm talking about resentment. You can ask my friend Kevin, he was around during that time. Like, there were a million 10th steps about my resentment, about what this man did to me. Except I'm not talking about the other stuff. I'm not 10-stepping about the fear, because I was absolutely crippled with fear that, that this man was going to die if I kicked him out. He was going to die if I let him stay. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified of what people in Alcoholics Anonymous were going to think of me when they found out I was living with an active alcoholic. I was terrified of your judgment. So I started lying. Not overtly lying, but I just stopped talking about the truth that was going on in my home. You asked me how things were. Everything's great. How's he doing? He's fine. Talk to him. He's great. Biggest lie I ever told in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm fine. Everything's fine. And I start to get sicker and sicker, and that selfishness. I had no idea how selfishness was running everything until I sat with a sponsor after this had all played out, and seeing that I actually didn't want this man to get sober for himself. Because I got to experience this beautiful gift of desperation. God completely cracked me wide open, like he broke me. And it was, at the time, the most painful thing I'd ever experienced in my life, but the most beautiful thing, because he cracked me wide open so he could shine his light in my heart. And I got to experience that, and I got to experience this whole beautiful new life that I have today, right? I got to experience those 3rd step promises, like we were reborn. I got to be reborn, except I don't want him to be reborn in that same way. I'm saying I trust God in all my affairs, like, I'm turning my will and my life over to the power of God, right? For me, but not for him. Like, I got him, God, don't worry about it. I'll get him a sponsor in a recovery house and do whatever I can to keep him sober. And I'll say I'm trusting God, but I'm totally agnostic when it comes to this person. And I don't want him to have that same experience. I only want him to be sober so my life can look the way I want it to look. That's it. I need my little fairy tale to play out the way I want it to play out in my head. And so I'll do whatever I can. And in the meantime, I'm denying this man his own pain, his own brokenness, and his own beautiful process. And in the middle of this, I have my oldest sister, Amy. She, I made an amends to her. She was one of the first amends I made too. And it was one of those amazing amends. Like, immediately when I made my approach to her, she admitted her wrongs to me. We had a very difficult relationship growing up, probably because we had so much in common. And what came out of that amends was the most beautiful friendship I've had probably with any of my siblings, because there was a deeper soul connection. She was very much like me. She was severely anorexic, and at that time she was very sick, and she was living in this very dark place. She was very alone. She was full of shame. She was full of fear, and she couldn't talk to another living soul, and God knows I knew how she felt. She couldn't tell her husband or my parents or her children, and she could talk to me, and that's what Alcoholics Anonymous gave me. It gave me this beautiful friendship with my sister that I got to have for a little over a year before my mom called me at 5 a.m. and told me that my sister was dead. And I'll never forget that day as long as I live. It's almost 4 years ago, actually, and I remember hearing the pain in my mother's voice, and I remember calling my best friend, and I remember knowing somewhere in my heart, like, I needed to show up for my family, and, intuitively knowing how to handle a situation that used to baffle me. Showing up and getting to be there and getting this beautiful gift. Again, it's something I see in hindsight. I don't see the beauty in it at the time. But there was no greater gift than being able to show up and stand there next to my mother when she saw her daughter in the casket for the first time, and being able to comfort my mother and not make it about me, being able to hold her. I was given that gift from Alcoholics Anonymous, from God, and from this amends process. Otherwise, I'd never be standing there with her. I'd never be able to walk in that room. I'd never be able to help her daughter pick out music for her funeral. I'd never be able to put together a collage and have her children, rely on me to do these things. And I would never be able to just be there in the moment and experience, for me, what true spirituality is this being in the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my entire life and knowing God is at the center of all of it, and somehow, some way, everything's going to work out. Somehow it's going to be okay, and feeling the presence of my Creator in all of it. And I came home from this and I'm still actively grieving, and I'm in horrible pain, and I'm crying every day, and I'm still living with this active alcoholic, and things in my life are starting to get difficult, and I'm running to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm sponsoring this woman, I'm getting sicker, and I'm getting sicker, and I'm getting sicker. And I don't know why. I'm working with others. Who are you helping? I'm working with others. I'm helping everybody except I'm dying. And then all of a sudden, I start realizing, in my brokenness, that's when I start diving back into the work. And that's when I start doing what our 6th step asks us to do, is pray for willingness. And I start asking God, please give me the willingness to stop clinging to this relationship. And I start asking God. And I don't know when I started praying or how long I was praying before God did what he did. But I do know that this man called me from whatever treatment facility he was in one day and said something about coming home, and God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. He spoke when I couldn't form the words and said, "You're not coming home." And this man did not come home, and my life completely changed. And I met a woman who would transform my life and set me on a new journey and walk me through this 11th step and start pointing out things that I had missed. Things like seek to see where religious people are right. Meanwhile, I'm running around judging other people's spiritual paths, which is really not spiritual. Or read other books and find other ways to pray and meditate. And she, I did an inventory with her that I walked away from actually feeling completely relieved and feeling that I can look the world in the eye again. Because here's the thing, I can run around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I can use anything to produce an effect, right? And sometimes that's running to women in Alcoholics Anonymous and trying to get out of my own problems. Sometimes it's just sponsoring people because I don't want to face what's going on inside of me. And it says in our literature that we cannot transmit something that we haven't got. There are 11 steps that come before the 12th step. And I can't just pick and choose. I can't use the 12 steps like a buffet. I don't know, for this alcoholic, it doesn't work. I have to continue to do inventory. I have to be honest with myself and another human being. I have to enlarge and perfect my spiritual life, or I'm going to get sicker. I can't stay in the same place. I have to keep moving. I have to keep seeking, and I have to keep growing. And there's more work for me to do now at 7 years than there was at 2. Because it talks also in our literature about the longer, we continue to get worse, never better. And that's for me sober as well. I'm never going to start getting better one day. I'm only going to continue to get worse. So that means I need more God. And I need more you guys. And I need more connection. And that's what I try to do. And I imperfectly try to do that one day at a time, every single day. And I get up, and sometimes I make horrific mistakes, and I check Facebook rather than first before I talk to God, or and the people who will see that, my roommate, he'll know. But as a direct result of doing this work, I get to live the most beautiful life today. I have a life today that's beyond my wildest dreams, and I didn't have wild dreams. I had no dreams, like the dreams of getting an SSI check or marrying a rich dude. These were the dreams I had. I didn't understand what, guys would throw that line at me when I first came in here, and I didn't have any dreams. So I was like, cool, thanks, great. Maybe a steady paycheck, that'd be great. But my life today is beyond description. I can't even believe I get to live the life I get to live today. I get to live in a 3-bedroom house with my best friend and 6 cats. I get to work in a law firm with 11 felonies. I got to be sworn in as a notary public for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the same courthouse where I was sentenced to state prison. And they, the Department of State who approved me, they saw my record. But what they see today also, what my employer sees today, what my family sees today, and what the people around me see today, is see that person who was reborn through the steps. They don't see that. I don't even resemble the person I used to be, and that's a direct result of doing this work and having an experience with the 12 steps. And and all that external stuff is wonderful. Having a car that I pay for, having a great credit score, all that stuff, I get as a byproduct of living this way of life and making financial amends. It's amazing. That could be gone tomorrow, but But I get these even greater gifts. I get to have relationships with people I never experienced in my entire life. I get to have relationships with the women I sponsor, who I get to see them light up and their own lives heal and get their children back and rebuild their lives. I get to have friendships with people who will drive an hour to hear me talk for probably the 90th time. I get to have real friendships with people and not just talk about the weather. I get to have real connections and real love and concern for other people. I get to have my daughter be my best friend in the entire world. And by all rights, she should hate me. And instead, she blows up my phone every single day. We run Broad Street together. We take road trips down the East Coast together. And it's more than I've ever deserved. She loves me because you guys taught me how to be a mother. You guys taught me to love her for who she is and not try to make her into somebody she's not. And I get that gift from staying in the Center of Alcoholics Anonymous and continuing to do this work. And I'm going to end with this. I have a son I haven't seen in 10 years. 12 years, 13 almost. And so I made an approach to his father and mother and when I first got sober and, when I first got out of prison. And I've made multiple approaches after that, and they're still not willing to hear that, and that is their right. And it says that, there are people who are not going to want to hear our amends. And here's the thing, we can still get free, and I'm here to tell you that that's the truth. But a couple years ago, I was really missing him, and I really didn't know what to do. And, thank God for a program of God reliance and not human reliance, because I was hearing it from a lot of different people, including family members, you didn't lose permanent custody, you still have legal rights, get a lawyer, do this, do that. And instead of going and getting all these different opinions, I did what the 11 steps suggest we do, which is ask God for an intuitive thought or decision, and that's what I did. And I kept praying, and I said, God, show me what to do. Show me what to do about Owen, please. And I would talk to God, and I'd be like, I miss him. I don't know what he looks like, but show me what to do here. Show me what to do. And during this period of time where I kept asking God, I ended up going on Instagram, and I typed in his name, and he had a girlfriend who made a joke Instagram account. And his face showed up, and I got to see his face for the first time in 10 years. And he's happy. And he has a beautiful life, and he is loved. And in my heart, and I knew in that moment, and I've known since then, and it doesn't mean I don't miss him, believe me, but I've known in my heart that God is in control of this situation, and God is handling this situation, and there's no need for me to put my hands in any of this. I can just let things be, and that's the gift I get from doing this work in Alcoholics Anonymous and having a relationship with God. I used to always put these external contingencies on my sobriety, I can't get and stay sober if somebody I love dies, I can't get and stay sober if I lose a job, I can't get and stay sober, if I don't get my children back. But it says very clearly in our literature, and I remember hearing this line, and I remember hearing it with my heart for the first time, when it says in chapter 7, let no alcoholic say they cannot fully recover unless they have their family back. It simply isn't true. And I'm here to tell you it is not true, because I don't have my whole family back, and I fully recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. I haven't thought about a drink or a drug in longer than I can remember. I have a beautiful life today, a beautiful and perfect and happy and purposeful life today, and that's as a result of doing this work and taking the 12 steps. And if you're sitting in this room and you have 2 hours sober or 20 years sober and you want to crawl out of your skin, or you're thinking of killing yourself or having a drink, I beg of you, before you walk out of this room tonight, grab somebody who's lit up from within, somebody who's walking around talking about the 12 steps, walking around with that big blue book under their arm and helping other people. Because this experience is available to every single person in this room, and I would be honored to walk this path with you. That's all I have.
All right, my name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Sarah, thank you for coming here and sharing that incredibly powerful message with our group here. A couple quick announcements and we'll get out of here. The food and fellowship for this meeting starts at 8 o'clock every week. If you want to get involved, if you're new, show up early, grab something to eat, enjoy yourselves. There's always a meeting after the meeting. If you got a burning desire, or if you just want to stay, get involved, you could always use help with the chairs. We have to leave 33 chairs out tonight. It's customary for us to thank our speakers. They come here on their own time and expense, so it's customary for us to form a line and thank our speakers. If you care to join us, we have a nice way of closing. Thank you.